Yeah, so Jeff, like starting it off, why does Hyperliquid work so well? Like your view, very broad strokes. What is it that makes it tick?
Well, I think there are many perspectives, like who you ask, right? Maybe for a user, the answer is that the chain finally and the application really kind of are not fighting each other, right? I think maybe before Hyperliquid, there were some gaps in the UX. For a pure just like UI user, you don't care at all about the tech. If you show them a centralized exchange and you show them a decentralized exchange, just go through the flow. It's pretty obvious that there's some extra clicks needed, and you gotta wait for things to happen before you can do other things. And so I think a big part of that flow was nicely abstracted away from the user in building the infrastructure from scratch. So like a simple thing like basically delegating trading permissions to another signer was something that it's kind of no-brainer in retrospect. Everyone does it now, but I do think it was something that needed to intentionally be built. And yeah, maybe for builders the answer is different. So depends.
I think I did have asked you this before, but like you went into a very competitive space, perp dexes, perp exchanges, and you decided, hey, I'm gonna like outcompete and do this better. Was there like a moment or a insight where that gave you the confidence that you thought, hey, I can do this better than what's out there?
I think the space looked competitive from the outside, but I think the problem with crypto is that it's so. If you follow the capital, it tells one story, and if you follow what's really going on, like the product, it tells a different story. So we were very lucky that before building, we were actually doing automated trading ourselves, and so it was pretty obvious to us that there were still a lot of gaps in DeFi. Like even as an automated trader, when you don't need to go through the UX, there were still already a lot of things, a lot of inefficiencies in the market due to structural issues with how DeFi worked. And so that plus, like once we spent some time looking at the user experience side, which I felt was like even yet another level of undeveloped, I think that gave us the confidence that there was capital was not telling the right story. That was not actually in its final state. And I still don't think it is. I think there's still a lot to do. So.
Job's not done.
Job's not done.
So your team, I mean, again, I want to kind of share with the audience how you actually build it. But the core team is still like 12 people or something?
I think 11.
Yeah.
But the team is not just the core team. I do want to make that clear. It's like, I think there's often a clear line between the core developers of a protocol and the application developers on top. I do think the line is very fuzzy for Hyperliquid, and we want to make it as fuzzy as possible, right? Like we do want people when they think about the team to think of all the builders. And I give this example a lot, but like spot trading is a core part of every verticalized centralized exchange product that I know of. But on Hyperliquid, it's built independently, and there can be multiple different teams bridging different assets, minting different assets, issuing different assets. And so I really think like look at any other protocol, those people would be a department in the team, and we have the privilege of just having talented builders self-organize and compete in the market and just execute.
That's all true, but to give you some credit too, you designed the incentive structure that the core team has designed the incentive structure that has incentivized the community to build on it too, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, did you think of yourself as like an expert in incentive structure design going into this?
Definitely not. We have like a natural respect for the power of incentives. I think it's really easy to underestimate that. When you look at markets, like markets are just a small set of rules, and then everything that follows is a corollary of those rules. And I think this is kind of like the mental model of economics broadly. Like I never studied economics, but I think that's roughly how people think about the world. Like that's the only way you can model a world. And so, yeah, incentives drive behaviors. And so I think there's like the technical design of incentives, and then there's the sort of philosophical design behind them. The end user is like such an important component of the system, And there's a lot of coordination that goes on. I think a lot of focus there, but sometimes it's hard to forget that ultimately, like, why a market exists is to take user A and user B and kind of connect them in the most efficient way possible. And so these end users are like the bread and butter of the system. Like, really, like, if you treat the end users right, then the whole thing works out. And so that's not really like a technical thing, but it really informs a lot of decisions like down the pipeline.
Yeah, you know, like, sure, there's all the incentives, the economic incentives that you're expert at from just being a market maker for so long. But I would also argue there's like this softer touch that Hyperliquid has around the ethos that I think is, you know, equally compelling or motivating to many of your builders or community members. And I still find it kind of pretty fascinating that such a competitive, hyper financialized product can still have such like a soft and welcoming community. And I do not know how you did that.
Well, that's not us. I mean, that's the community. So we just do what we do, and I think we're very fortunate that, you know, in this very path-dependent world, that I think the right people came at the right time, and, you know, we can only do what we do. We're only you know, a handful of people, and we only have so much reach, and we're actually very bad at, you know, even getting the reach that we maybe could have. But the community kind of carries the torch forward, right? And I think we're very fortunate about that. Like you're right. I don't think in every possible outcome this necessarily would have happened. And I think there's very mercenary capital and attention in the space. And yeah, we're just very lucky that the community is as it is.
Okay, let's get, I mean, I love that, yeah. But let's, being maybe a little bit more technical, Perps. Where did you first like find or hear about or discover the Perp product? Do you remember?
Back then, it's hard to remember. I mean, it's easy for me to remember, but it's not talked about much, just how revolutionary BitMEX was back when it first came out. I think they really went 0 to 1. A lot of respect. I think a lot of crypto owes a lot to just like them pioneering technology, the technology of Perps. I think realizing it and kind of building it out at scale. And so I think the first time I saw Perps was just looking at this exchange that was doing so much volume, and just looking at like what were people actually trading there. And it wasn't actually the underlying. It wasn't. I mean, there were some futures contracts being traded, but by and large, they were trading this other thing that was just so novel. And I remember reading the docs and being pretty fascinated by it. I don't think it clicked immediately that it was such an impactful like innovation, but I do remember thinking like, wow, this is like so inefficiently priced. Like I remember if you looked at the dated contracts, they were like all over the place, and if you looked at the funding rate on the Perps and the sort of premium and discount on the dated contracts, they were very out of whack. And my instinct was like, well, like this is probably, a lot of smart people probably think about this, and I'm sure it's efficient, and I just don't understand why it is. But I do think it actually just was not efficient. And then I think I checked a year later, and it was all in line. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I had you and I both come from traditional finance backgrounds, and I had the same experience. You saw this perp thing, and you're like, wait, how are they doing that? How is this derivative tracking the underlier? Yeah. And then it's this weird funding rate payment thing that's actually pretty exotic when you think about it. But the retail trading experience is amazing, because you just buy this thing, and you can buy it with leverage. You can go long or short, and you never have to roll it like a futures contract. So I got an angle to push on here, but like maybe we can spend a second talking about your take on perps versus futures versus options, particularly with this kind of view of Hyperliquid as the blockchain to house all of finance. Like, where do you think those products excel or have limitations?
Yeah, that's right. I think housing all finance is not. It's not just a meme. It is really the goal, and we like to be pretty unopinionated. So I do think if housing all the finance means options, dated futures, like I think these things will all exist on Hyperliquid. The the thing we've seen so far is that there's both thinking from it academically and just looking at the data. It doesn't seem obvious that that much more than perps are needed. Okay, so maybe I'll take it a step back. Like you said, like retail, by and large, in crypto, I think has demonstrated that perps are the superior product. And I think there are two main reasons for that. One is there's no fragmentation between different contracts, whether it's like different strike prices, different expiries, or for dated futures, rolling on the near the settlement dates. So there's just one product, and that's really powerful for just concentrating all the liquidity in one place, giving the end user the best price when they want to execute in size. And the other thing is that it's just a lot more comprehensible to the end user, because you can actually trade perps without knowing about funding, and I think that is sort of the ideal. Like that's kind of the abstraction of leverage, that the holy grail of leverage. And yeah, so I think for those two reasons, both for retail and for people who just want like Delta One exposure, especially if it's over a short time frame, I think there's likely no better product. Don't knock on wood, like don't want to, yeah. But I think that there'll always be evolutions. But to me, it feels like perps are such a clear evolution over options and futures for these specific market participants.
Okay, so to tell the audience, right, I was doing some ChatGPT research ahead of this, just sort of sizing what options on Robinhood look like. And I think something Jeff and I are aligned on, options trading, equity options trading, most users, I don't think they're interested in trading the volatility of equity options. They're just looking for leverage. And in traditional finance, you can't get leverage that easily, unlike with the perp product. And just to give you some math and kind of be bullish on this space, Robinhood trades about 200 million contracts a month, which if you make some approximations around notional and delta, I think that looks about like 50 billion notional a day, give or take. And I don't know. My take, I don't know what Jeff's take is, but my take is equity perps would be a better way to trade a lot of this type of leverage exposure. So, I don't know that you can comment on that or would want to.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment. I think I view basically like perps as the best way the best way currently known and known to work at scale for a bunch of people to basically create a very liquid market for price discovery and speculation on a single number when that number is continuous, basically evolves continuously over time. I think that's like, if the thing you want to do boils down to that, then perps are a great instrument, a great mathematical formulation to achieve that goal. And I think if you just look at what TradFi does, a lot of it really does boil down to that. And I think like specific examples aside, I just think there will always be a need in the world to allocate capital efficiently and to price things correctly. And I'm just so bullish on everyone basically realizing that perps are kind of getting the green light, both sort of checks out mathematically, and the institutions are realizing the regulations are sort of like coming to terms with like, hey, this is actually an innovation, a technical innovation that we can apply broadly to markets and make things more efficient. And that is something I'm super excited about. And I think Hyperliquid has an important role to play there. And yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Well, no, I think you said something pretty insightful that I would summarize as a lot of TradFi is betting on whether a single number is going up or down. Mm-hmm. And perps are a very beautiful product to bet on that number. And right now, perps are crypto prices, but here we segue in talking about HIP3, where that goes. But basically, if you have permissionless perp deployment, Hyperliquid's coming for TradFi, right?
I wouldn't frame it that way. I think of it more as DeFi is not something coming in, like a force to come in and eat TradFi's lunch or something. I don't really think it's healthy to think of it as a one or the other, but rather I think DeFi is it's basically tool. It's an upgrade to the existing technology that the traditional financial system happens to be using right now. I think there's not a decentralized system and a traditional system. There is just one financial system, and I don't think it's productive to think of it that way. I think what we all want is efficient markets for everyone, and that leads to more prosperity for the world. And I think, at least from my perspective, what Hyperliquid is building is something that, the users shouldn't care who's coming in and deploying markets. They should care about the quality of the markets and the liquidity. And I think it will happen. I see this mindset shift kind of happening over the past few months, and I hope it continues.
Yeah. Yes, and perps are a beautiful they're a beautiful product. Ignore TradFi DeFi. They're a beautiful product that retail investors love, and that Hyperliquid is very good at building. HIP3, permissionless perp deployment. I mean, first of all, maybe describe it for a second for the audience of what's happening there, and then what are you bullish on? What are you excited about?
Yeah. So it's basically a way for anyone to deploy perp markets without reinventing the wheel. The wheel here being a blockchain, assets of value secure on the blockchain, consensus, a global consensus around what the state of the blockchain is, and then the things that are unique to Hyperliquid, performant, natively implemented order book, margining systems. There's a lot that goes into building a perps backend, and I do think that if perps are great, but in order to really provide a good product for your users, you need to build all of these things, then I think most existing institutions probably don't view that risk favorably. But if it's here's a decentralized ledger, which is an upgrade because it allows permissionless global access to the markets that I'm deploying, and I don't even need to think, as a deployer, I don't even need to think about how the order book and margining works. All I need to think about is the spec of the market I'm deploying. Then all of a sudden, I think the work you need to do goes down several orders of magnitude. And I think that's just core to how we think about how the decentralized financial system of the future should be built, which is that people should not be reinventing the wheel. They should be basically the infrastructure should be perfected by just once, and then it should be neutral, and it should allow anyone who is competent to come in and leverage that infrastructure to see their vision through. Yeah.
The competent point is actually kind of hard to do with some of these permissionless systems here.
Yes.
Do you have, what's the strategy to keep it clean? One of the things that I think you care deeply about is there's not a bad user experience here.
Yeah, I think it's important to have the two, which are a bit at odds, which is that the system needs to be neutral. I think this is very core to Hyperliquid's ethos and to all of DeFi's ethos, which is that it should be neutral, it should be permissionless, and it should be kind of welcoming, like you said. It's a bit of a subjective thing. But on the other hand, the products need to be good, and I think how this played out with Spot was super cool. The primary spot assets that are traded on Hyperliquid are built by a completely independent team called Unit, and they didn't actually launch immediately after Spot came out. I think it was many, many months later, and they have their own network basically securing these assets. I'm not going to get too much in detail there, but you can definitely check them out. But if you go on hyperliquid.xyz, for example, it shows if a user wants to trade Bitcoin, they don't need to know all this behind the scenes. It is just the interface can abstract it away for the user. And I think for HIP3, what I think probably will happen is that users will gravitate towards interfaces that abstract things away well. And I think this is I basically think the free market will solve this problem. Just because 1,000 people can come and deploy their markets doesn't mean 1,000 people have equal opportunity to kind of be in front of the end user, right? Ultimately the users go where trust is earned, and trust is hard to earn and very easy to lose. So I think the incentives around all these things will sort themselves out. And so I don't know what the final picture looks like, but I think it will be permissionless to deploy, and there will be very high quality applications, in the bullish case, I guess.
Love that. High quality perps on most things, bringing all of finance, housing all of finance. Builder codes. So, I think builder codes are super cool because, again, it's yet another way for you to scale Hyperliquid with kind of incentivizing others to build on your platform. Maybe it's worth just giving the audience an overview of like builder codes and also what's working well there, and what you're excited about. And then maybe we can go back and forth on like where they're not working perfectly.
Yeah, happy to. Builder codes are another very simple idea. It's similar to HIP-3. It's like how can incentives and the protocol be designed to let builders really run with their idea and like set them up for success. And so the idea behind builder codes is that anyone can create interfaces, and as long as a user opts into it, they can the builder can charge a fee on top. And it's a simple idea, but done permissionlessly and at scale, I think you get a lot of really cool network effects. Like recently, Phantom launched their Perps product, and Phantom's a super good team. They're obviously like very crypto native and understand a lot about the space and their users, but they didn't previously have a Perps product. And it kind of goes back to the same point about HIP-3. I think if Phantom were weighing, well, should we build a Perps DEX? I don't know their team personally and their strengths, but there's a very good chance they would say, oh, like it's not worth our time because this is kind of does not synergize with what we're good at. But with builder codes, the question now becomes, well, do we have a unique distribution, and are we uniquely positioned to offer an interface to users that adds value to them? And in this case, the answer is yes. They have amazing distribution across all of crypto, and they have a mobile app that is beloved, and they simplify trading experiences for users. And so this is such a natural synergy where they don't need to go and rebuild the Perps DEX. They can focus on their part, which is a very hard problem in and of itself. And when the two things align, then Hyperliquid benefits because there's more volume, and more volume creates more liquidity, and generally more users and network effects. And for Phantom, their users have a great experience because when they want to trade massive size, they don't they have the peace of mind that their order is hitting the most liquid decentralized liquidity in the world. And I think maybe that's like a concrete example of the good case, and happy to talk about what doesn't work.
I also want to say I think it's so cool when you combine that with HIP-3 because you can imagine, just to theorize, that there's a new mobile app, feels like a fintech app, that has some new perp products that is getting paid but using your backend. It's pretty wild, pretty cool.
It's a neutral backend, so we just think of infrastructure as encompassing a little bit more than just consensus and literally agreeing on some bytes in the world. Like we view, for finance to go on chain, it needs to be performant. Like I think people forget just how much traffic TradFi processes, and for that to happen, just as a practical matter, infrastructure needs to include liquidity. And by here I mean performant order books, margining, etc. Like these things are very, very hard to build on a VM. Like it needs to be part of the infrastructure.
Yeah. So I think the part where, as many people know, there's a lot of Hyperliquid copycats at this moment too, and it's sort of funny because in a different world they could have just built businesses using builder codes. But I guess any take on why you think some of these other folks want to own the full stack? You think it's just profit motive?
Well, I can't speak for the other teams. I do think, it's a free market. I think competition is good. I do think oftentimes, probably what happens as industries mature is that in a free market, some people do just try to reinvent the wheel, and maybe they can reinvent it better, and maybe they can't. But I think it's an opportunity that everyone should have. And if you go to market today and you say I don't want to build on AWS. I want to put my own machines in a data center and figure out the electricity and the uptime for my users and everything. Like that's a decision that everyone has. And so there are some success stories there, but by and large, I think as the market matures, the sort of opportunity set shifts. And so I think it's just points to the fact that crypto is still very immature and early. And I think I'm happy to see these sort of maybe they're copycats today, like by and large, but maybe someone innovates and does something really good for the market, and maybe Hyperliquid can learn from that too.
Yeah, that's the kind of humble response I'd expect. But no, I think it's also accurate. Competition keeps you honest. All right, not too much time left. We'll go maybe a little bit over. Stablecoins. So in addition to being like CEO and CTO, I also think you're a marketing genius because the whole USDH governance process I thought was an incredibly bullish marketing event for Hyperliquid. But maybe just actually tell us what a Hyperliquid aligned stablecoin looks like and what you think, what advantages, where you think that can go.
Yeah, so going back to housing all of finance, I think we focus a lot on Perps today, and I do think people when they think of Hyperliquid, they often think of Perps. That is changing a bit, right? There's the EVM, there's like a culture being created with NFTs, I think. So I think that is changing, but by and large, people think Perps, and finance is much larger than Perps, and then trading itself even. So I think stablecoins are obviously a very hot topic. I do think some of that is potentially frothy, but I do think there's some substance here, which is that TradFi is embracing crypto rails, I think. Similar to how we think Hyperliquid should be infrastructure to let the existing financial system upgrade its technology. I think that kind of viewpoint is becoming more consensus at this point, and stablecoins are just a very digestible way for massive institutions who are already at scale to feel safe about kind of like dipping their toes and into this whole new unfamiliar technology stack. And I think there's good reason, because stablecoins are a simple thing to explain. I think the value proposition is very clear, and the sort of existing adjustable market is very clear, which is that by and large, these are dollar stablecoins, and the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, and it is in and of itself a very important financial product. And I think stablecoins are kind of like an upgrade of that. And so, if Hyperliquid is going to house all of finance, it needs to really be the place that the stablecoins that sort of win the stablecoin wars or whatever are going on, they should be built on Hyperliquid, because this is the platform on which transaction volume should happen, and sort of I see a lot of really big businesses being built around payments and sort of upgrading banks. I think these are just basically really allowing global access to a great product, which is the US dollar, that everyone there's genuine demand for. I think is massive. And the idea behind the alignment, I guess, sorry, it's kind of a long answer, is that Hyperliquid right now versus where it should be, I think there's still a massive, massive gap. And to get there, I think basically Hyperliquid needs to leverage its very unique distribution, which is kind of crypto native, liquidity as sort of demand for liquidity at size. This is a very unique distribution for just genuine demand for finance, and leveraging that to actually build these massive payment products and sort of neobank products, I think it's not a short journey. But I think the idea behind the alignment, protocolized alignment, is to make that path clear. And then I'm really excited to see amazing teams step up and kind of embark on that journey.
It's interesting. Your answer is not totally what I would have expected. It wasn't hey, we need a stable coin that earns us the interest for hype holders. The answer, my take was great, we need to house all the stable coins because we want to house all of finance.
Not all of them, but that if there is one that makes sense to build on Hyperliquid, which I think there are, should be at least one massive business to build here, but probably many, that these that there should be a path forward, basically.
Do you worry about the user experience at all? Because right now, today, one quote currency is kind of nice. I mean, we've talked about this before, but like once you have multiple quote currencies, do you worry at all that that's just going to confuse more of the normie users?
Yeah, and I will say like the one currency now, it's not. I think it's a bit of a meme here, but I think Circle actually does a super good job, and like they, Hyperliquid was like very, very different from other blockchains that sort of multi-chain solutions plug into. So I do think it really is just like the fact that Circle can embrace Hyperliquid and Hyper EVM as a first-class chain into the CCTP network. I think it's just like, it's humbling to us like that it indicates the level of adoption and demand. So I don't think there's like anything wrong per se with the existing system. It really is. It's just zooming out a lot. Like we're not trying to micro optimize anything here. It is just like they are just massive businesses yet to be built by anyone, and we think Hyperliquid it's very aligned with the vision of Hyperliquid. And so yes, there'll be some fragmentation, but also I think similar to the answer to the question about whether it's spot permissionless deployers or HIP3 deployers being permissionless. I think there are similar effects here where if things are designed right, then the free market kind of like figures things out, and the end user can simultaneously benefit from it having been and continuing to be a very competitive and open system while still having the sort of the concentration benefits of liquidity.
Yeah. I think there's something very thoughtful and very insightful. Maybe to spell it out for the audience a little bit, I think some of these Hyperliquid front ends are going to pick a stablecoin because of builder codes or incentives or alignment. And you got the free market now figuring out which the right product or kind of permutation of features is, all in a way that benefits this incredibly neutral backend infrastructure. So guys, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for doing this. And Hyperliquid.